Marcus wiped the grease from his hands with an old rag as he walked through the bustling spaceport terminal. His work shift at the ship repair bay had ended, and all he wanted was to get home to Earth. The mechanic's jumpsuit still smelled of hydraulic fluid and metal shavings, but he didn't care. After 3 months fixing ships on the Outer Rim station, he was ready for some real food and his own bed. The terminal buzzed with activity as beings from across the galaxy hurried to catch their flights. Tall, blue-skinned Altarians glided past with their flowing robes. Stocky Kronan traders argued loudly about cargo prices. The chittering sounds of insectoid Zephyrians filled the air as they communicated in their rapid-fire language. Marcus had grown used to the diversity during his time working in space, but he still found it amazing how many different species had come together under the Galactic Federation. He checked his ticket again, first-class seat on the luxury liner Stellar Dawn, heading to Earth. It had cost him nearly all his savings. But after 3 months of sleeping on a hard bunk and eating recycled protein paste, he figured he deserved some comfort for the 2-week journey home. The boarding announcement echoed through the terminal in a dozen languages. Marcus shouldered his small duffel bag and joined the line of first-class passengers. Most were wealthy traders, diplomats, or corporate executives. He felt a bit out of place in his work clothes, but his credits were just as good as theirs. As he waited, Marcus noticed commotion near the economy boarding gate. Raised voices carried across the terminal floor. He turned to see what was happening and spotted something that made his blood boil. A massive dragon stood hunched near the economy line, his once proud scales now dulled and scarred. The creature had to be at least 10 feet tall, even with his head lowered, his powerful frame unmistakable despite the weariness that seemed to weigh him down. What caught Marcus's attention immediately were the prosthetic legs where the dragon's hind limbs should have been. Military-grade replacements, standard issue for combat veterans. A short, pale humanoid, in an expensive suit, was jabbing his finger at the dragon, while a security guard stood nearby, looking uncomfortable. Marcus couldn't hear every word, but he caught enough. Absolutely not. I paid extra specifically to avoid sitting next to creatures like that. The smell alone. And look at the size of it. There's no way that thing fits in an economy seat without spilling over into mine. The dragon's voice rumbled low and patient. Sir, I understand your concern. I have purchased my ticket properly. Perhaps we could arrange. I don't want to hear it. This is discrimination. I demand you find other accommodations for this. This beast. Oh. Marcus felt his jaw clench. The dragon was clearly a veteran, probably from one of the recent conflicts along the border systems. The kind of being who had put his life on the line to keep trade routes safe and protect Federation colonies from raiders and hostile forces. The security guard shifted nervously. Sir, if you could just lower your voice. Don't tell me to lower my voice. I have rights. Premium economy means premium comfort, not sharing space with oversized lizards. Other passengers were starting to stare now. Some looked uncomfortable with the scene. Others seemed to agree with the complaining passenger. Marcus noticed a few beings quietly switching to different lines to avoid the confrontation. The dragon veteran's shoulders sagged slightly. In that moment, Marcus caught sight of something that made everything clear. Pinned to the dragon's worn travel vest was a small medal, the Galactic Service Cross. Marcus recognized it because his own grandfather had earned one during the Proxima conflict 20 years ago. It was awarded for exceptional bravery under fire. Without really thinking about it, Marcus stepped out of the first-class line and walked over to the commotion. Excuse me, he said, addressing the complaining passenger. What seems to be the problem here? The short humanoid turned to him with a sneer. Nothing that concerns you, human. Unless you want to sit next to this creature, too. Marcus looked at the dragon veteran, who met his eyes with a mixture of dignity and exhaustion. Up close, he could see more details. Battle scars crisscrossed the dragon's neck and arms. One of his horns had been broken off and replaced with a metal cap. This was definitely someone who had seen serious combat. Actually, Marcus said, turning back to the complaining passenger. I think there might be a simple solution. He walked over to the dragon and extended his hand. Marcus Chen, ship mechanic. Thank you for your service. The dragon's eyes widened slightly. Then he carefully shook Marcus's hand with one massive clawed finger. Korath, of the Draconic Legions, retired. The gratitude is unexpected, but appreciated. Marcus pulled out his ticket and held it up. I've got a first-class seat on this flight. Would you be interested in trading? The entire argument stopped. The complaining passenger's mouth dropped open. The security guard blinked in surprise. Even other passengers who had been watching turned to stare. Korath's eyes went even wider. Human. Marcus, I cannot accept such generosity. First-class passage costs about what I make in 6 months? Marcus interrupted with a smile. But you know what? I've been sleeping on a maintenance bay cot for 3 months. Economy seat's going to feel like luxury anyway. Besides, someone who earned that medal deserves better than dealing with jerks who don't know respect when they see it. The complaining passenger sputtered. You can't be serious. You'd give up a first-class seat for a veteran who served our galaxy, Marcus finished firmly. Yeah, I absolutely would. Korath stood to his full height, and even the complaining passenger took a step back. But the dragon's voice was gentle when he spoke. Marcus Chen, I have not experienced such kindness from a stranger in many years. Are you certain? Completely certain, Marcus said, handing over his ticket. Enjoy the flight, sir. As they made the exchange at the counter, the complaining passenger stormed off, muttering about how the galaxy was going to hell. A few other passengers actually started clapping. Marcus felt a bit embarrassed by the attention. But Korath's grateful expression made it all worthwhile. I must ask, Korath said as they finished the paperwork. Why would you do this for someone you do not know? Marcus shrugged. My grandfather always told me that how we treat veterans says everything about who we are as people. Besides, anyone willing to put prosthetic legs between civilians and whatever tried to take your real ones earned some respect in my book. Korath's expression grew distant for a moment. The Void Raiders. 3 years ago. They attacked a civilian transport convoy. My unit held them off, but... He gestured to his artificial limbs. You saved lives, Marcus said simply, at considerable cost. That's what makes it heroic. They boarded the ship separately, Marcus heading to economy while Korath was escorted to the first-class section. As Marcus settled into his economy seat, he felt pretty good about the decision. The seat wasn't terrible, and he'd have plenty of time to catch up on sleep during the long journey. What Marcus didn't know was that his simple act of kindness was about to set off a chain of events that would echo across the entire galaxy. Korath wasn't just any dragon veteran. He was the son of the Dragon Empress, ruler of one of the most powerful independent systems in the galaxy. More importantly, he was traveling to Earth for secret negotiations that could change the balance of power forever. But even more than that, their brief interaction had been recorded by a passenger's personal device. Within hours, the video would be spreading across the galactic network with a simple caption. Human gives up first-class seat for Dragon veteran. As the ship launched and jumped to hyperspace, Marcus dozed in his economy seat, completely unaware that he had just become the most famous human in the galaxy. The story was already spreading from system to system, shared by billions of beings who were hungry for proof that there was still decency and honor in the universe. In the first-class cabin, Korath sat in comfortable silence, but his mind was racing. In all his years of service, through all the battles and the pain of recovery, he had grown cynical about the kindness of strangers. The galaxy could be a cold, harsh place where most beings looked out only for themselves. But this human mechanic had shown him something different. Without knowing who he was or what he represented, Marcus had simply seen a veteran who deserved respect and acted accordingly. It was the kind of genuine honor that Korath had thought was extinct in the modern galaxy. As the ship settled into its hyperspace cruise, Korath made a decision that would change both their lives forever. He activated his personal communicator and sent an encrypted message to his mother, the Dragon Empress. The message was simple. Mother, I have found someone worthy of our attention. When we reach Earth, I request permission to extend the formal gratitude of our house to a human named Marcus Chen. The Dragon Empress received the message at her palace on Draconum Prime. She knew her son well enough to understand that this was not a casual request. Korath had been wounded not just in body, but in spirit during the war. For him to reach out about a stranger meant something significant had happened. She immediately ordered her intelligence network to find out everything they could about this Marcus Chen. What they discovered was unremarkable on the surface. A skilled mechanic, honest work record, no criminal history, no significant wealth or political connections. Just an ordinary human who had apparently done something extraordinary enough to impress her notoriously difficult son. The Empress smiled for the first time in weeks. Perhaps this ordinary human was exactly what the galaxy needed to hear about right now. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the video of Marcus giving up his seat was being shared faster than a hyperspace news burst. Within 12 hours, it had been viewed over 1 billion times. Comments poured in from every member species of the Federation and beyond. This is what humanity represents at its best. Why can't more beings be like this human? Faith in galactic civilization restored. Marcus Chen for Galactic Council. News networks picked up the story. Talk show hosts debated what it meant for interspecies relations. Political commentators used it as an example of everything right or wrong with modern society, depending on their viewpoint. But perhaps most importantly, the video reached Earth's government officials and military leadership. They suddenly found themselves fielding calls from embassies and trade delegations across the galaxy, all wanting to know more about this Marcus Chen and what he represented about human values. Admiral Sarah Rodriguez, Earth's military liaison to the Galactic Federation, was the first to understand the implications. She had been working for months to improve humanity's standing in galactic politics. Humans were still relatively new to the Federation, and many species viewed them with suspicion or indifference. But this video showed humanity in a light that no amount of diplomatic maneuvering could achieve. It was authentic, spontaneous, and revealed the kind of character that other species could respect and trust. She immediately began making calls to find out when this Marcus Chen would be returning to Earth. If he was going to be the face of humanity, whether he wanted to be or not, she needed to make sure Earth was ready to support him. Back on the ship, Marcus had no idea that his life was about to change completely. He spent his time reading technical manuals, chatting with other passengers, and enjoying the simple luxury of not having to work for 2 weeks straight. Korath, meanwhile, found himself thinking more and more about the human's simple act of kindness. During his years of service, he had worked alongside beings from dozens of species. He had seen courage, honor, and sacrifice, but he had also seen too much selfishness, prejudice, and indifference. Marcus had asked for nothing in return, had expected no reward, had simply seen someone who deserved better treatment and acted to provide it, even at personal cost. As the ship continued its journey toward Earth, both Marcus and Korath were traveling toward a destiny neither of them could have imagined when they first met in that crowded spaceport terminal. The Stellar Dawn dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, with barely a vibration. Marcus had been dozing when the announcement came over the ship's communication system that they would be docking at Luna Station in 6 hours before the final approach to Earth. He stretched in his economy seat, feeling surprisingly refreshed. The 2-week journey had been exactly what he needed after his stint on the Outer Rim. Good food, decent entertainment systems, and most importantly, no emergency repair calls in the middle of the night. As passengers began preparing for arrival, Marcus noticed increased activity among the ship's crew. Security personnel were moving through the corridors more frequently, and there seemed to be some kind of heightened alert status. He figured it was probably just standard procedure for arriving at Earth, which had stricter security protocols than most systems. What Marcus didn't know was that the ship's communication array had been buzzing with encrypted messages for the past week. Government officials from Earth, the Dragon Empire, and a dozen other major powers had been in constant contact with the ship's captain. The simple video of his act of kindness had somehow escalated into a major diplomatic event. In the first-class section, Korath was also preparing for arrival, but his preparations were far more complex. His personal communicator had been receiving regular updates from his mother's court, and each message made it clearer that this journey to Earth was going to be unlike anything he had expected. The Dragon Empress had decided to use Marcus's gesture as the foundation for a major diplomatic initiative. For years, she had been looking for a way to strengthen ties with Earth without appearing weak or desperate. Human space technology was advancing rapidly, and their military had proven surprisingly effective in recent conflicts. An alliance with Earth could benefit both species enormously. But previous diplomatic overtures had been formal, stiff affairs that accomplished little beyond exchanging pleasantries. This was different. This was personal, emotional, and authentic in a way that traditional diplomacy could never achieve. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. Korath activated his communicator and saw his mother's face appear on the small screen. "My son," the Dragon Empress said without preamble, "your simple message about this human has created opportunities I had not dared hope for. Earth's leadership is very interested in meeting both you and this Marcus Chen. They see the same potential we do. Mother, I must caution you. Marcus Chen is not a diplomat or a politician. He is simply a good person who did the right thing. If we overwhelm him with ceremony and politics, we may destroy the very authenticity that made his gesture meaningful." The Empress nodded thoughtfully. "Your wisdom has grown during your service, my son. Very well. We will approach this carefully, but make no mistake. This could be the beginning of something significant for both our peoples." The connection ended, leaving Korath staring out at the blue-green planet, growing larger in the viewport. Earth looked peaceful from space, its white clouds swirling over brown and green continents. It was hard to believe that this relatively small world had produced a species that was already making such an impact on galactic civilization. Meanwhile, Marcus was gathering his few possessions and preparing to disembark, completely unaware that he had become the center of a diplomatic storm. His biggest concern was whether his old apartment would still be available, and if his pickup truck would start after sitting unused for 3 months. The ship docked at Luna Station smoothly, and passengers began the routine of customs processing and transfer to Earth shuttles. Marcus had been through this process dozens of times, so he was surprised when a Luna Station security officer approached him in the customs line. "Marcus Chen?" the officer asked politely. "That's me. Is there a problem with my documentation?" "No problem at all, sir. If you could please come with me. There are some officials who would like to speak with you." Marcus felt a moment of panic. Had he somehow violated regulations during his work on the Outer Rim? Were there issues with his travel permits? He followed the officer through a series of corridors he had never seen before, ending up in what was clearly a VIP processing area. Admiral Sarah Rodriguez was waiting for him, along with several other officials in military and civilian dress. Marcus recognized none of them, but their bearings suggested they were important people. "Mr. Chen," Admiral Rodriguez said, extending her hand. "I'm Admiral Rodriguez, Earth's military liaison to the Galactic Federation. We need to talk." "Ma'am, if I've done something wrong." "On the contrary," the Admiral interrupted with a smile. "You've done something very right. Perhaps more right than you realize." She gestured to a comfortable chair, and Marcus sat down nervously. The other officials arranged themselves around the room, and he suddenly felt like he was at the center of some kind of tribunal. "Mr. Chen," Admiral Rodriguez continued, "are you aware that your gesture toward the Dragon veteran on your flight has become something of a galactic phenomenon?" Marcus blinked in confusion. "My what?" "Your decision to give up your first-class seat to the Dragon veteran. It was recorded by another passenger, and has been viewed by over 10 billion beings across the galaxy in the past 2 weeks. 10 billion? Marcus felt his stomach drop. "I don't understand. It wasn't that big a deal." I just thought the guy deserved some respect. That's exactly what makes it such a big deal, said a woman in a diplomatic uniform. In a galaxy where most interactions between species are driven by politics, economics, or military considerations, your gesture was purely humanitarian. No agenda, no expectation of reward, just simple decency. Admiral Rodriguez leaned forward. Mr. Chen, what do you know about Korath, the dragon you helped? Not much. Seemed like a good guy. War veteran, obviously. Why? He's the son of the Dragon Empress, ruler of one of the most powerful independent systems in the galaxy. And he's been telling everyone who will listen that your gesture represents the best of what humanity offers the galactic community. Marcus felt like the room was spinning. He's a prince? I gave my seat to an alien prince? You gave your seat to someone you thought deserved respect, Admiral Rodriguez corrected. The fact that he happens to be royalty is secondary. But it does mean that your gesture has political implications you couldn't have anticipated. Another official spoke up. Mr. Chen, the Dragon Empress has requested permission to meet with you personally. Several other major powers have also expressed interest in cultural exchanges with Earth, specifically citing your actions as evidence of human character. This is insane, Marcus said, running his hands through his hair. I just wanted to help a veteran. Now you're telling me it's some kind of international incident? International is too small a word, Admiral Rodriguez said with a slight smile. Try intergalactic. The good news is that the response has been overwhelmingly positive. Humanity's reputation in the galactic community has never been higher. And the bad news? You're about to become the most famous human in the galaxy, whether you want to be or not. The question is, how we handle that responsibility. Before Marcus could respond, there was a commotion in the corridor outside. Through the reinforced viewport, Marcus could see a large figure approaching, escorted by Luna Station security. Even at a distance, there was no mistaking the distinctive silhouette of a dragon. That would be Prince Korath, Admiral Rodriguez said. And he specifically requested to see you before you return to Earth. The door opened, and Korath entered, having to duck slightly to clear the frame. In the confined space of the office, his size was even more impressive than it had been in the spaceport, but his expression was gentle, almost hesitant. Marcus Chen, he said formally. I hope I am not intruding. Marcus stood up, feeling awkward. Your Highness, I had no idea. Please, Korath interrupted. Just Korath. Titles are for courts and ceremonies. You treated me as a person, not a position. I would prefer to continue that. Okay, Korath it is. Though I have to say, this is all a bit overwhelming. Korath's expression softened. I imagine it is. I wanted to speak with you before the formal ceremonies begin, while we could still talk simply, as we did on the ship. Formal ceremonies? Admiral Rodriguez cleared her throat. The Dragon Empress has announced her intention to visit Earth personally to present you with the Order of Galactic Friendship, their highest civilian honor. It's the first time she's left her home system in over 50 years. Marcus sat down heavily. This is really happening, isn't it? It is, Korath said, settling into a reinforced chair designed for larger species. But I want you to understand something, Marcus. This is not just about politics or diplomacy. What you did for me was deeply personal. In the years since my injury, I have often felt diminished, pitied, sometimes, feared, occasionally, but rarely respected for what I had given rather than judged for what I had lost. He paused, looking out at the Earth growing larger in the viewport. Your gesture reminded me of something I had almost forgotten. That honor and decency still exist, even among strangers. That service and sacrifice still means something to good people. You gave me back something more valuable than a first-class seat. You gave me back my faith in the fundamental goodness that still exists in this galaxy. The room was quiet for a long moment. Marcus felt the weight of Korath's words, understanding for the first time that his simple gesture had meant far more than he had realized. I'm glad I could help, Marcus said finally. I mean that. But I'm not sure I'm ready to be some kind of galactic symbol. None of us are ready for the roles fate gives us, Korath said gently. But sometimes the galaxy needs symbols of hope more than it needs our comfort. Admiral Rodriguez stood up. Mr. Chen, I want to be clear about something. No one is going to force you into any role you don't want to accept. But I also want you to understand the opportunity here. Humanity is still new to galactic civilization. We're often seen as aggressive, unpredictable, or difficult to understand. She gestured to Korath. But your actions have shown other species something different about human nature. They've seen our capacity for spontaneous kindness, for putting principle before self-interest, for recognizing worth in others regardless of species or background. What the Admiral is saying, Korath added, is that you have accidentally become an ambassador for your species, not through appointment or training, but through character. And that may be more powerful than any formal diplomacy we could attempt. Marcus looked around the room at all the expectant faces. These were important people, dealing with issues that affected billions of lives across dozens of star systems. And somehow, his simple desire to do the right thing had thrust him into the middle of it all. What exactly would I need to do? He asked finally. Admiral Rodriguez smiled. For now, just be yourself. Meet with the Dragon Empress when she arrives. Accept the honor she wants to bestow. Let people see that the Marcus Chen who gave up his seat is the same person they'll meet in formal ceremonies. The galaxy is hungry for authenticity, Korath added. They've seen the video, but they want to know if the person behind the gesture is real, if he represents something genuine about humanity, or if it was just a momentary impulse. And if I mess up, if I say the wrong thing, or disappoint people, then you'll be human, Admiral Rodriguez said with a laugh, which is exactly what the galaxy needs to see. Perfect diplomats are a credit to a dozen. Decent people willing to do the right thing are apparently much rarer. As the meeting continued, Marcus found himself being briefed on protocols, schedules, and the various delegations that were requesting meetings. It was overwhelming, but he was beginning to understand that this was bigger than just him. The video of his gesture had apparently sparked a galaxy-wide conversation about values, character, and what different species could learn from each other. Human recruitment for galactic service organizations was up 300%. Interspecies cultural exchange programs were reporting record applications. Most importantly, several ongoing conflicts had seen unexpected progress in peace negotiations, as species that had been viewing each other with suspicion began asking what they could accomplish if they approached each other with the same open-hearted respect that Marcus had shown to Korath. As the shuttle prepared to depart Luna Station for Earth, Marcus looked out at his home planet with new eyes. He was returning as a very different person than the one who had left 3 months ago to work on the Outer Rim. Tomorrow, he would meet with the Dragon Empress. Next week, there would be formal ceremonies with representatives from a dozen species. Next month, who knew what opportunities and challenges would arise? But tonight, he was just going home. To his apartment, his truck, and hopefully, a good night's sleep before his new life, as an accidental galactic diplomat, began in earnest. 6 months later, Marcus Chen stood on the observation deck of the new Galactic Friendship Station, watching construction crews put the finishing touches on humanity's first joint diplomatic facility. The massive structure orbited Earth at Lagrange Point 2, a symbol of the unprecedented cooperation that had emerged from what the media had dubbed the seat herd round the galaxy. Marcus still couldn't quite believe how his life had changed. The simple gesture that had started it all seemed like a lifetime ago, though he could still remember every detail of that moment in the spaceport when he had decided to give up his first-class seat to Korath. The Dragon Empress had indeed come to Earth, bringing with her a diplomatic entourage unlike anything humanity had ever seen. The ceremony where she presented Marcus with the Order of Galactic Friendship had been broadcast live across 200 star systems. But more importantly, it had been followed by 3 weeks of intensive negotiations that had resulted in the most comprehensive alliance agreement in galactic history. The Chen Accords, as they were now called, established new frameworks for cooperation between the Dragon Empire and Earth, in technology sharing, military coordination, and cultural exchange. Similar agreements had followed with a dozen other major powers, all referencing the principles of mutual respect and spontaneous kindness that Marcus had demonstrated. But the changes went far beyond formal treaties. The video of Marcus's gesture had sparked a galactic movement that journalists were calling the Kindness Revolution. Schools across the galaxy were teaching about human values alongside traditional subjects. Military academies were studying the incident as an example of how individual actions could have strategic consequences. Most remarkably, interspecies violence had declined by 40% galaxy-wide in the 6 months since the video went viral. Sociologists were still debating whether this was correlation or causation, but the timing was undeniable. Remarkable view, isn't it? Marcus turned to see Korath approaching, his prosthetic legs making barely a sound on the metal decking. The Dragon Prince had become a close friend over the past months, serving as Earth's primary liaison to the Dragon Empire. His presence on the station was both official and personal. He genuinely seemed to enjoy working with humans. "It's incredible," Marcus agreed, watching a squad of mixed human and dragon engineers working together to install a massive communication array. 6 months ago, I was just a mechanic trying to get home. Now I'm watching humans and dragons build something together that's never existed before. "You are still a mechanic," Korath pointed out with what Marcus had learned was the dragon equivalent of a smile. "You insisted on maintaining your day job. Remember? Admiral Rodriguez was quite frustrated when you refused the full-time diplomatic position." Marcus laughed. "I still can't believe she offered to make me an ambassador. I barely graduated high school. Perhaps that is why you were perfect for the role. You approached our first meeting without preconceptions or political calculations. You simply saw someone who needed help and provided it." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the construction activity. The station was designed to accommodate dozens of different species, with variable gravity sections, atmospheric controls, and specialized facilities. It was an engineering marvel that would have been impossible without the cooperation that had emerged from their chance encounter. "Marcus," Korath said finally, "there is something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you months ago." Marcus turned, noting the serious tone in his friend's voice. "What's wrong?" "Nothing is wrong. But you deserve to know the full truth about that day we met. I was not traveling to Earth for tourism or simple diplomatic business. I was coming to negotiate a secret military alliance against the Void Raiders." Marcus felt a chill. The Void Raiders were the galaxy's most feared enemy, a collection of species that had rejected civilization in favor of conquest and destruction. They had been responsible for Korath's injuries, among countless other atrocities. The Dragon Empire had intelligence, suggesting the Raiders were planning a major offensive against the core systems. Korath continued. "We needed Earth's military support, but previous diplomatic efforts had failed. My mission was to offer technology transfers in exchange for a mutual defense agreement, and your gesture changed everything. Instead of approaching Earth as supplicants needing help, we could approach as friends, offering partnership. The difference in negotiating position was enormous." Marcus processed this information slowly. "Perhaps, but probably not on terms as favorable to both sides. And certainly not with the broader galactic support we ultimately achieved. Your actions gave us moral authority we could never have claimed otherwise." Before Marcus could respond, an alarm chimed softly throughout the station. Both of them recognized the signal. Incoming priority traffic from deep space. They made their way quickly to the command center, where Admiral Rodriguez was already coordinating with Earth Fleet Command. The main display showed a tactical overview of the Epsilon sector, and the red symbols scattered across it told a grim story. "The Void Raiders?" Korath asked grimly. "A major offensive," Admiral Rodriguez confirmed. 3 colony systems under attack, with more raids expected. Intelligence suggests this is the big push we've been expecting. Marcus felt helpless as he watched the military professionals spring into action around him. This was the kind of situation where his mechanical skills wouldn't help anyone. "Admiral, came a voice from the communications station. "We're receiving multiple requests for assistance. The Dragon Empire is mobilizing their fleet, but they're asking for immediate support from our rapid response units." Granted. Deploy battle groups 7 and 12 immediately. Ma'am, we're also getting reports from the Altarian Navy, the Cronan Defense Force, and the Zephyrian Collective. They're all volunteering units for a joint response fleet. Admiral Rodriguez looked surprised. "All of them?" "Oh, all of them. Yes, ma'am. The Altarians specifically mentioned that they want to support the principles of the Chen Accords. The Cronans said they owe humanity a debt of honor. The Zephyrians just transmitted for Marcus Chen and the Kindness Revolution." Marcus felt overwhelmed. "They're going to war because of something I did?" "They're going to war because evil needs to be stopped," Korath corrected. "But they're doing it together because you showed them what cooperation could accomplish." Over the next several hours, the command center became the coordination hub for the largest interspecies military operation in galactic history. 57 different civilizations contributed ships, personnel, or resources to what was being called the United Galactic Response Force. Marcus watched in amazement as species that had been neutral or even hostile to each other began working together seamlessly. Humans and dragons shared tactical data. Altarians and Cronans coordinated supply lines. Even the normally isolationist Zephyrians opened their space lanes to allow faster deployment of allied forces. "This is unprecedented," Admiral Rodriguez murmured, studying the deployment maps. "We have more firepower concentrated in the Epsilon sector than has ever been assembled for a single operation." The battle, when it came, was swift and decisive. The Void Raiders had planned their offensive, assuming they would face isolated planetary defense forces and maybe some limited Federation response. Instead, they ran headlong into a united galactic fleet that overwhelmed them through sheer coordination and determination. Marcus followed the action through the command center's displays, watching red symbols representing Raider forces disappear one by one. The colonists they had attacked were rescued, their damaged worlds protected, and the Raider fleet itself was either destroyed or scattered to the outer rim. But more importantly, the joint operation established new protocols for galactic cooperation. The United Response Force became a permanent organization, with rotating command structure and shared responsibility for maintaining peace across all member systems. When the victory reports came in, the command center erupted in cheers from beings of a dozen different species. Marcus found himself caught up in celebratory embraces from people he had never met, all of whom seemed to know his name. "Marcus Chen," called out a tall blue Altarian officer. "Your kindness has saved lives across the galaxy. The Chen doctrine of mutual respect has proven itself in battle," announced a stocky Cronan admiral. Marcus looked around at all the happy faces and felt a mixture of pride and humility. His simple decision to give up an airplane seat had somehow contributed to the defeat of one of the galaxy's greatest threats. Later that evening, as the celebration wound down and the various species began returning to their home systems, Marcus found himself alone with Korath on the observation deck where they had started the day. "Do you regret it?" Korath asked quietly. "Your simple life as a mechanic is gone forever. You're now one of the most recognizable beings in the galaxy. Your every action will be scrutinized and analyzed for diplomatic significance." Marcus considered the question seriously. His old life had been simple and comfortable, but ultimately small. He had fixed ships, earned his pay, and gone home to watch entertainment vids. It had been a good life, but not necessarily a meaningful one. "No regrets," he said finally. "Though I still can't believe that giving up an airplane seat led to all this." "It was not the gesture itself," Korath said thoughtfully. "It was what the gesture represented. In a galaxy where most interactions between species are transactional, trade agreements, military treaties, territorial negotiations, you showed that beings could simply treat each other with respect and kindness, expecting nothing in return. And that was enough to change everything?" It was enough to remind everyone what civilization is supposed to be about. We had all become so focused on managing our differences that we forgot about celebrating our common values. Marcus looked out at the stars, knowing that among them were hundreds of worlds where beings were living better lives because of choices made in a spaceport 6 months ago. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we build on what we have started. The Friendship Station will become the model for a dozen others. The Response Force will evolve into a permanent peacekeeping organization. The cultural exchange programs will continue to bring species together in ways we never imagined possible." "And me?" Korath smiled, the expression warm and genuine. "You fix what is broken. You help those who need help. And you remind the galaxy that sometimes the most profound changes come from the simplest gestures." As if to prove his point, Marcus noticed a group of young beings from various species working together on one of the lower decks. Their laughter audible, even through the station's hull. They wore matching uniforms marking them as participants in the new Interspecies Youth Corps, a program that had emerged from the cultural exchange initiatives. "You know," Marcus said, watching the young people work together, "I think I could get used to this ambassador thing. As long as I can still fix the occasional engine, I believe that can be arranged," Korath said. "After all, you have proven that mechanics can change the galaxy. Perhaps it is time the galaxy learned to appreciate them properly." The stars wheeled overhead as the station continued its orbit around Earth. Somewhere among those points of light, beings of countless species were living in a galaxy that was safer, more cooperative, and more hopeful than it had been 6 months ago. And it had all started with a human mechanic who believed that a veteran deserved a first-class seat. Marcus Chen had returned to his simple life as a mechanic. But now he fixed more than just ships. He had helped fix something broken in the galaxy itself. The growing cynicism and isolation that had been tearing civilizations apart. His tools were still wrenches and calibrators, but he had learned that the most important repairs often required nothing more complicated than basic human decency. As the years passed, the story of Marcus and Korath became the foundation legend of a new era in galactic civilization. Children across hundreds of worlds learned about the human who gave up his seat and the dragon who never forgot the kindness of a stranger. It became the standard by which all interspecies interactions were judged. But for Marcus himself, the most important measure of success remained simple. When he looked in the mirror each morning, he could honestly say that he had treated others with the respect and dignity they deserved, regardless of species, status, or circumstance. And in a galaxy full of complex political calculations and strategic maneuvering, that simple principle continued to change everything.